Although the GPD2 was released in the later half of 2018, that got me wondering, is its tiny big brother still worth it? The original GPD Pocket. Now, before we dive into why I think the original GPD Pocket is still worth considering even though its new younger brother is on the market, I think we should start by looking at the black and white specs of the original GPD Pocket. So let's start with the brains. The original GPD Pocket is rocking one of the last generation of Intel Atom processors. Specifically, the quad-core, non-hyper-threaded Intel Atom X7 Z8750. This supports boost up to 2.56 gigahertz and has a 2 megabyte cache. Pumping information into this ultra-low TDP yet capable processor is 8 gigabytes of LPDDR3 RAM at 1600 megahertz. 8 gigabytes, that's surprising because nobody would have faulted GPD for putting only 4 gigabytes in here. 8 gigabytes is actually usable. You can actually do stuff with 8 gigabytes of RAM, so it's a very welcome addition here. Multitasking through open applications, you could have several tabs open in Chrome, and you can even do a little bit of audio and video editing. But about that last part, of course, manage your expectations, but we'll get into that in a moment. Let's move on to storage. Loading up that RAM with software and data is again a quite generous 128 gigabytes of eMMC solid-state storage. I know it's just eMMC, but it's quite snappy. It's more than fast enough to keep that RAM fed without delay. And again, I say that 128 gigabytes is generous because nobody would have faulted this for having 64 gigabytes of RAM. I know some people might be thinking, I wouldn't fault it for having 32 gigs, but let's face it, this thing is kind of expensive. I would have faulted it for having only 32 gigs of RAM. But nope, 128 gigabytes of RAM? That doesn't make sense. But nope, we get 128 gigabytes of storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM. That makes this thing quite a little powerhouse, especially for its form factor. Moving on to the 7-inch display, it's breathtaking. 1920 by 1200 pixels touchscreen. It is just gorgeous. It is up there with the best of the best. It is better than a whole lot of what's out there right now, even today. Now, pushing those pixels is Intel's integrated GPU, the Intel HD 405, so you're not going to be doing AAA gaming or anything like that. And I know a 7-inch screen doesn't sound like much, but considering the typical mobile use case scenario for this specific device, it's really nice. For instance, usually what you're going to be doing with a device like this is you're going to be coming from a smartphone, and even the biggest smartphone isn't 7 inches. Well, not usually. There might be some off-brands. I think the Note made the Note Mega a while back. I'm getting sidetracked. Point is, you will usually be coming from a smaller screen to this bigger 7-inch screen. And that feels like loosening your belt after a big dinner. Now, of course, if you're going to be going from a 12-inch screen to a 7-inch screen, like you're going from a 12-inch laptop, 13-inch laptop to a 7-inch laptop, it seems cramped going from bigger to smaller, of course. But again, for this niche device, you're carrying this around, odds are you're going from your phone to this. And in that case, this is a godsend. 7 inches is quite generous, and even a relief on the eyes. Now, the port selection on this tiny device puts Apple to shame. Apple, this is courage right here. This is courage. This tiny thing has the same USB Type-C as everybody else. No, it's not Thunderbolt. Again, remember, this is an Atom processor. But you also have a mini display port, a headphone jack, and what the heck is this? A full-size USB Type-A 3.0 port! Who'da thunk it? For your wireless connectivity, yes, you're getting the 5 GHz and 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi, the standard 802.11 AC, and Bluetooth 4.0. This thing only weighs 480 grams. It is 106 millimeters wide, 80 millimeters deep, and 18.5 millimeters thick. You'll notice I didn't mention a webcam. That's because there is none, but honestly, I haven't missed it. That said, I do think it was kind of a silly omission given the business nature of such a device. I think traveling business professionals would have welcomed a webcam for Skype conferencing and things like that. But for the most of us, again, I haven't missed it. So there are the relevant specs. Let's talk about what it's like to actually use the GPD Pocket. First of all, the build quality is mind-boggling. The hinge is so smooth. It's just tight enough, but it's very smooth. This thing is built from aluminum, and it's as well built as any Apple device. It's solid too. You could probably use this as self-defense. I have no doubt in my mind you could knock a jabroni out with this thing. And even when this thing is off, I just find myself rubbing my fingers over the aluminum. It's so nice. It's so... Where was I? That's cold. When it's on, like I mentioned, viewing anything on this gorgeous 7-inch display is just a treat. And that brings us to the controversial keyboard. Simply put, the keyboard is not backlit, and I think it could have been laid out much better. For instance, it seems like the designers just sneezed the punctuation on here. It's all over the place. Here's a apostrophe over here, here's a comma over here, here's a period. It doesn't make sense. But that being said, the keyboard is very high quality, and you can get over the learning curve rather quickly, and you can be up to 80% speed, maybe even 90% speed, faster than you think. Once you get used to it, it's quite nice. If you're 7'1" and weigh, I don't 1,000 pounds, the keyboard's gonna be cramped. But for the most of us, you're gonna be just fine here. Get over that learning curve of the layout, you're good. Now, there's obviously no trackpad, so you're gonna be rubbing nip. But it's a good nip. It's an accurate nip. And this nip feels good. Even though it's a good nipple, I'd still recommend bringing along a mouse. But you do that anyway with your laptop, so just... If you don't have a mouse, the touchscreen and the nipple works just fine. I don't think the speaker is worth mentioning. It's below the keyboard. It makes noise. You can hear people talking. That's about it. An EDM drop is just a drip. Anyway, meh speaker. Moving on. Of course, the GPD Pocket will cruise the internet, will type emails, type documents, watch Netflix, all without skipping a beat. But what you want to know about is the horsepower, if any. You want to know how well this thing can game, or possibly even create some content. Like I mentioned, you can edit 1080p video in a pinch. You can scrub through the timeline and everything. I have done it with Sony Vegas. It works quite well. Bigger, more complicated edits will make it chug a little bit. But the biggest drawback to video editing, besides managing your expectations on the horsepower, is just the 7-inch screen size. You can't have a very big preview window in there. So if you do want to edit video, again, in a pinch, luckily you have ports. Type-C supports display, as well as mini HDMI. Now, the 8 gigs of RAM and the HD 405 graphics are going to do their best, but the real issue with editing video isn't necessarily the small screen or anything like that. It's render time. You're going to have to give yourself some time to export a video. And I don't mean start exporting and then go grab a cup of coffee. I mean, really, start exporting and go to bed. When you wake up, hopefully it'll be done. Now, of course, all this depends on the length of the video you're editing and all that stuff. All I'm saying is that in a pinch, on an airplane, in a hotel room, if this is all you have, you can edit light 1080p videos with it. About the fan, while you're using it, the fan will kick on fairly often. Let's just be honest here. But it's not that loud, and you get used to it. And again, it's not on all the time, just really kind of when you're pushing it. Although I have noticed that when there's a lot of Windows updates going on in the background, the fan does spool up quite a bit, actually. Again, it's not anything annoying. It's just, it's there. I'm just letting you know that it's there. So like a classic car, if you just run this thing once in a while so that the updates can stay updated, this thing runs like a dream. The fan, it's very tolerable. All right, let's get to brass tacks. Gaming. What can you expect with this? The theme of this video has been managing expectations, so manage your expectations here too. Look at this thing. You're not going to be gaming on any modern AAA titles. You're not running Just Cause 4 on this. Not if you appreciate your sanity. You'll kill the little hamster running on the wheel in there. But older titles, drop it down to 720p, tweak the settings a little bit, the graphic settings. Yeah, you can do it. It just depends on your definition of playable. Where this thing really shines is emulation. You can run everything up to a PSP. Everything else, amazing. You connect a Bluetooth controller to this. I highly recommend the Xbox One S controller. This thing is an emulation powerhouse. It is a dream on international flights. Then when you get to your hotel room, you have options for hooking it up to your the TV in your hotel room. Then you can Donkey Kong Country your butt off. Now, in terms of battery life, GPD is very... how do I put this? Brave? When they talk about how much battery life this has, they claim 12 hours. You'll be lucky to get around 7, which is still respectable. 7-8 hours? That's a more reasonable expectation for this. But you're not getting 12 hours, I'm sorry. So with the battery life, the specs and review of the GPD Pocket, that part of the video is done. Let's talk about why you might consider saving a few bucks going with the original GPD Pocket versus the GPD Pocket 2. And really, it boils down to the niche nature of this device. Yes, if you're one of those people that this sort of device appeals to and you're just rolling in cheddar, yeah, get the GPD Pocket 2. No one will blame you. But I don't think you really have to. Now, it goes without saying that this part of the video is only my opinion. That being said, I think that what you're going to be doing 90% of the time with a device of this form factor, like emails, Netflix, light productivity, very light gaming, the original GPD Pocket ticks all of those boxes in spades. And thusly, you can save a little chunk of change versus going with its sexier younger brother. I don't think you're going to be missing out on a whole lot if you want to save a few bucks going with the original GPD Pocket.